Media gave me the fantasy, VHS tapes, skate DVDs, and games like Tony Hawk's on the PlayStation made me dream of what I couldn't do and what I didn't have around me. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 taught me tricks I never landed in real life. Kickflips, 900s, impossible combos, but of course, reality was different. Being a skater meant getting hurt, and I quickly learned that reality had hidden costs, and maturing is realizing those costs and deciding which ones you're willing to pay. This is my story of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, of leaving skateboarding behind, and learning that sometimes the hardest trick is letting go. I bought my first skateboard at 10, 1 year before I got into guitar. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 made everyone go bonkers and skating was suddenly the coolest thing ever. I couldn't ride a bike and at the time I was considered a nerd in school. And in fact, video games were so alternative back then that only me and two other kids were the only ones in our class who cared about video games or even owned consoles. For people to notice you at a time, you had to be good in sports. And in Portugal, nobody cared about skateboarding. Everyone only cared about football, and video games at the time were for nerds. But if you were any good at any sport, even a fringe one like skateboard, maybe, and just maybe, you had the chance of being one of the popular kids at school. Nobody skated around me, so I had no one to teach me, but luckily my cousins who had the game as well also got their parents to gift them a skateboard. So we all kinda tried to figure it out on their backyards and tried to copy whatever the characters were doing in the game. PS1 is kinda pixelated, so you had to really squint your eyes and imagine a lot, but yeah, you could probably see where this is going. Somehow, we discovered in the internet a videotape of somebody actually teaching some tricks. And it wasn't just anybody. It was the actual Tony Hawk from the games, the legend himself. This was a holy grail, we thought. We were going to take off. Except not. If only by watching a video could become a legend, right? And solve all your problems, correct? So, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Just kidding. Anyway, Gustavo Ribeiro is now putting Portugal in the map for skating, and shout out to Gabriel and Pacal as well. But back then we almost had no skate parks and no skaters. The only park I knew was in Monsanto, which still exists to this day and is pretty sick, but it was 1 hour away and I had to go by car. My father always said this would be too much work for him, so the answer would always be a no. If you're American or come from a big country, this might sound even funnier to you, but anyway, back to the story. Me and my cousin did what we could, and whenever we found random people skating on the street, we would ask if they knew tricks or if they could teach us. Of course, this only happened like twice in our youth, and you might think that if the only thing you do is an ollie, then you'd probably not get hurt a lot. But we were kids, and we tried a lot of stupid stuff, and I mean a lot. Since we had no skate park around or couldn't go much more farther than our street, we would always come up with weird obstacles or do Frankenstein stuff behind our parents' back with tools we shouldn't even be allowed to touch from the garage. We were kids and couldn't properly do anything really, but we were in the hopes of creating our own skate park at the garage. Heck, 11-year-old me even called the most popular skater in Portugal at the time, Luís Paulo. I think he made a demo with Tony Hawk once, and since he had made skate parks with the help of the government, I called him to ask if he could help us out too. It was kinda cool for him to take a 11-year-old seriously, so we tried to convince my uncle after the call to build this mini ramp in the garage, but of course the answer was no. That being said, I kinda have to give props to our DIY punk vibe that came from being fearless and innocent kids. We just wanted to skate, but of course none of this moved really forward and no one took us seriously. We were reaching a point where we were trying to do crazy stuff like cavemen from Cars, and that kinda got us into trouble. Around that time, I also started learning guitar, and music was always a huge therapeutic part of my life, so I enjoyed it very much and started to take it more and more seriously. Up to the point I started to think I wanted to save my wrist from falls, since I didn't want to risk my future playing guitar. Every dream carries a price, and fantasy gave me the freedom, but reality demanded sacrifice. Even at the time, I was beginning to think more and more about this, and I always felt kinda bad for abandoning skate. After all, the feeling of just riding the skateboard, feeling the wind, and having the liberty to go anywhere is still one of the best feelings for me to this day. I felt like a poser and a quitter for just simply quitting. Even at 12, I felt like an old soul. an uncle for making this type of decisions. But due to my father and the environment I was in, though, I always thought choosing music was the most logical thing, and it was more of an adaptation rather than me just quitting. Of course, some of you might be thinking, isn't the easiest answer to just continue with both? But my personality was all in, and if I had to go to guitar, I needed to become obsessed with it. The same as with skate. I didn't just want to skate at a time, I wanted to become good. Just like any teenager, I was starting to think about what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to become, and more I was starting to realize that identity is kind of fluid. I definitely felt like I wasn't a kid anymore and wasn't into cartoons or childish toys, but I was definitely a teenager and a kid still. A lot of me had changed, and I knew inside of me that a lot of me would still change in the future. Passion evolves and hobbies change, I realized. I couldn't figure it out at the time, but it's okay to change. It is part of growing up. It's that old saying that with great power comes great responsibility, and maturing is realizing that. It's okay to adapt, and there is no shame in choosing consciously what you want your life to become. In fact, it's very important. It's only natural that you think about this one time experience that is life and what you want to take out of it. But in order to do that, you have to mold your experience or focus the land of your reality, right? It's okay to aim for something even if it means leaving things behind. It's okay to switch your stance and give yourself permission to pivot. Don't see change as a defeat, but rather as growth. If you have any story of something that was hard for you to accept or something that was hard for you to change, I would love to hear those stories in the YouTube comments. That's what YouTube's for. And if not, it would be cool to at least know what was the hardest trick you could land. I would love to hear those stories. But anyway, if you're watching till the end of this video, thank you. You are the true OG.